I never thought a Tuesday morning in February would turn into a legal battle that would expose an entire HOA board's criminal enterprise. But there I was, standing in my driveway in Lakewood, Colorado, watching my breath turn into small clouds while my car warmed up in the freezing dawn. The temperature had dropped to -8 degrees overnight, and my 2019 Honda Accord needed a solid 15 minutes to defrost properly before I could safely drive to work. I had started the car at 6:30 in the morning, coffee mug in hand, planning to go back inside and finish getting ready while the engine did its thing. That was when I saw her marching across the street like she was leading a cavalry charge against an invading army. Brenda Patterson, president of the Ridgewood Hills Homeowners Association, a woman whose entire existence seemed dedicated to making everyone else's life miserable. She was wearing a purple velour tracksuit that looked like it came from a discount store in 2003. Her bleached blonde hair pulled back so tight it probably contributed to her perpetually pinched expression. She was maybe 50 years old but acted like she owned every square inch of the neighborhood, which technically the HOA kind of did, but that was beside the point. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the morning cold. "Excuse me, sir. You cannot have your vehicle idling like that. It is against HOA regulations, and I am going to have to write you up for this violation." I turned to face her, genuinely confused. "Good morning to you too, Brenda. What are you talking about? I am just warming up my car." Section 12. Paragraph 4 of the HOA covenant clearly states that no vehicle shall be left running unattended in any driveway or street within the community, she said, pulling out her phone like she was about to read me the entire Constitution. "This is your third violation this month, and I am going to have to issue a fine." Third violation. Brenda, I have never been cited for anything. I just moved here 4 months ago, and I have been warming up my car every morning since December. Nobody has said anything about it until right now. She ignored me completely, tapping away at her phone. "The fine for a third offense is $500 payable within 30 days. You will receive formal notification in the mail." $500. For warming up my car. That is absolutely insane. It is -8 degrees out here. Do you expect me to just get in a frozen car and drive? The rules apply to everyone equally, she said with that self-satisfied tone people use when they think they have won an argument. If you do not like the rules, perhaps you should have read the HOA covenant more carefully before purchasing property here. "I did read it," I said, feeling my frustration building. "There was nothing in there about not being able to warm up your car. Show me exactly where it says that." "I do not have time to educate you on the rules you agreed to follow," she snapped. "The citation will be mailed to you. If you refuse to pay, we will place a lien on your property. Have a good day." She turned and started walking back toward her house, which was directly across the street from mine. I stood there holding my coffee, watching her go, feeling like I had just been slapped by bureaucracy itself. My name is Isaac Henderson. I am 32 years old, and I work as a software engineer for a tech company in Denver. I had bought this house in October specifically because it seemed like a quiet, well-maintained neighborhood. The HOA fees were reasonable, the streets were clean, and the houses all looked nice. Nobody mentioned that the HOA president was a tyrant with a superiority complex, and apparently nothing better to do at 6:30 in the morning than harass people about warming up their cars. I went back inside, finished getting ready, and headed to work still fuming about the interaction. When I got to the office, I immediately started researching Colorado idling laws during my lunch break. What I found made me even angrier. There was nothing illegal about warming up your car on your own property. The state had some regulations about commercial vehicles and public spaces, but a private citizen warming up their personal vehicle in their own driveway was completely legal. The city of Lakewood had no specific ordinances against it either. As for the HOA covenant, I pulled up my digital copy and searched through every single page. There was absolutely nothing about idling vehicles. Nothing. Brenda had made it up entirely, or was so delusional she believed her own lies. I called the HOA management company that afternoon. A bored-sounding woman named Jennifer answered and listened to my complaint with all the enthusiasm of someone reading a phone book. "So, you are saying the president cited me for something that is not actually in the covenant?" I asked. "I would have to review the specific section she referenced," Jennifer said with a sigh. "Can you give me the section number again?" "Section 12, paragraph 4. Except when I look at section 12, paragraph 4, it is about holiday decorations. It has nothing to do with vehicles." There was a long pause. "Let me look into this and get back to you. When can I expect to hear back?" "Within 5 to 7 business days." 5 to 7 business days. She said I am getting a $500 fine. I need this resolved now, not in a week. "I understand your frustration, sir, but I need time to review the documents and speak with the board. I will call you back as soon as I have information." She hung up before I could respond. I spent the rest of the day distracted, angry, and already planning what I would do if they actually tried to find me. That evening when I got home, there was already a letter in my mailbox. Somehow Brenda had managed to generate an official-looking citation on HOA letterhead and deliver it to me within 12 hours. The letter stated that I had violated Section 12, paragraph 4 on 3 separate dates: February 1st, February 2nd, and February 3rd. Today was February 3rd. She was claiming I had violated a rule that did not exist 3 days in a row, including one day that had not even finished yet. The fine was indeed $500, due within 30 days. The letter stated that failure to pay would result in additional penalties, legal action, and potentially a lien on my property. It was signed by Brenda Patterson as HOA president and countersigned by someone named Dorothy Summers as HOA secretary. I took a picture of the letter and emailed it to the management company, demanding an immediate response. Then I did what any reasonable person would do in 2026. I started documenting everything. I set up my phone to record video every morning when I started my car. If Brenda wanted to play games, I would have evidence of exactly what I was doing and when. The next morning, February 4th, I went out at 6:30 again. The temperature was still below zero, and my car absolutely needed to warm up. I started recording video as I approached my car, showed the timestamp on my phone, narrated what I was doing, started the car, and went back inside. Through my front window, I watched and waited. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, Brenda came storming across the street again. I grabbed my phone and went back out to meet her. "Good morning, Brenda," I said cheerfully, making sure my phone was recording. "Beautiful day, is it not? You are doing it again," she said, pointing at my car like it was committing a felony. "Did you not receive my citation? Do you think the rules do not apply to you?" "I received your letter, yes. I also reviewed the actual HOA covenant, and Section 12, paragraph 4 is about holiday decorations. There is nothing in the covenant about idling vehicles. Would you like to show me where it actually says I cannot warm up my car?" Her face turned red. "I know what the covenant says. I have been president of this HOA for 7 years. Then you should know that what you are citing me for does not exist. I spoke with the management company, and they are reviewing the situation. Until then, I am going to continue warming up my car because it is legal, it is necessary in this weather, and it is not actually against any HOA rules. I am calling the police, she said, pulling out her phone. You are creating a public nuisance. Go ahead, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. I would love to hear what the police have to say about this. She actually did it. She dialed 911 right there in front of me while I recorded the whole thing. I heard her tell the dispatcher that there was a man in her neighborhood who was violating city ordinances by leaving his car running unattended and creating a public nuisance. She gave them my address and her address, and said she was the HOA president and needed an officer to respond immediately. They are on their way, she said smugly, crossing her arms. We will see what the police have to say about your attitude. I am looking forward to it, I said honestly. I was nervous, sure, but I also knew I had not done anything wrong. I went back inside but kept watching through the window. Brenda stood in my driveway like a sentinel, occasionally glancing at her phone and then back at my car as if it might explode at any moment. About 20 minutes later, a Lakewood Police Department cruiser pulled up. A tall officer in his mid-30s stepped out, looked at my still running car, looked at Brenda standing in my driveway, and walked over to her. I could not hear what they were saying, but I saw her gesturing wildly at my car and then at my house. The officer nodded, took some notes, and then walked up to my front door. I opened it before he could knock. Good morning, officer. Good morning, sir. I am Officer Mike Carson with Lakewood PD. I received a call about a vehicle idling complaint. Is that your Honda Accord? Yes, sir, it is. I was warming it up because it is below zero and I need to drive to work safely. He nodded slowly. How long has it been running? About 25 minutes now. I usually let it run for 15 to 20 minutes in weather like this. Are you planning to drive it soon? Yes. I was just finishing my coffee and grabbing my work bag. I will be leaving in about 5 minutes. Officer Carson glanced back at Brenda, who was now standing at the end of my driveway with her arms still crossed, looking like a very angry lawn ornament. He looked back at me. Do you mind if I see your license and registration? Not at all. I grabbed my wallet and went out to my car to get the registration from the glove box. Officer Carson examined both documents, handed them back to me, and then did something unexpected. He smiled. Mr. Henderson, there is nothing illegal about warming up your vehicle on your own property. You are not violating any city ordinances, county regulations, or state laws. This is completely legal. That is what I thought, I said, feeling relieved. The HOA president over there has been telling me it is against HOA rules, but I checked the covenant, and there is nothing in there about it either. HOA disputes are civil matters and outside of police jurisdiction unless there is an actual crime being committed, he explained. But I can tell you that from a legal standpoint, you are doing nothing wrong. In fact, it is the responsible thing to do in this weather. Driving with frozen windows and a cold engine can be dangerous. Can you please explain that to her? I asked, gesturing toward Brenda. Officer Carson walked over to Brenda and I followed at a distance. Madam, I have spoken with Mr. Henderson. He is not violating any laws. Warming up a vehicle on private property is legal in Colorado. But he is creating a nuisance, Brenda protested. The HOA has rules about this. HOA rules are a civil matter between you and the homeowner. They are not criminal issues. If you have a dispute about HOA regulations, you need to go through the proper civil channels. You cannot call 911 for HOA violations unless there is an actual emergency or crime occurring. So you are not going to do anything, she demanded. There is nothing to do, madam. No crime has been committed. I would advise you to work this out through your HOA management company or through civil court if necessary. Do not call 911 for this type of issue again. Emergency services are for emergencies. Brenda looked like she had been slapped. This is ridiculous. I am the HOA president, and I have the authority to enforce the rules in this neighborhood. You may have authority over HOA matters, madam, but you do not have authority over city, county, or state laws. Mr. Henderson is not breaking any laws. Have a good day. Officer Carson turned back toward me, and that was when things took an interesting turn. He looked at my car, still running and presumably nice and warm by now, and then looked back at me. Hey, this might be a weird question, but where are you headed? He asked. Downtown Denver. I work near Union Station. His face lit up. No kidding. I am ending my shift in about 10 minutes, and I need to head downtown to meet my wife. She works at the courthouse. My car is having heating issues, and I was dreading the cold drive. Any chance I could catch a ride with you? I can give you some gas money. I stared at him for a second, processing the absurdity of the situation. The cop who just shut down the HOA president over my idling car was now asking me for a ride because my car was warm and his was not. The irony was almost too perfect. Absolutely, I said, grinning. I would be happy to give you a ride. No need for gas money. Are you sure? I really appreciate it. Let me just wrap up here and grab my stuff from the patrol car. I watched as Officer Carson walked back to his cruiser and spoke into his radio, presumably letting dispatch know he was clearing the scene. Brenda was still standing there, looking absolutely furious and confused. Officer Carson came back with a duffel bag, having changed out of his duty belt and into a regular jacket. Ready when you are, he said. We got into my beautifully warm car while Brenda stood in my driveway, watching with her mouth hanging open. As I backed out, Officer Carson waved at her politely. Have a great day, madam. We drove toward Denver, and Officer Carson turned out to be great company. His full name was Mike Carson, and he had been with Lakewood PD for 8 years. He told me stories about ridiculous calls he had responded to over the years, including one about a woman who called the police because her neighbor's wind chimes were too loud, and another about a guy who reported his own car stolen before remembering he had parked it at a friend's house 3 days earlier. Your HOA president is something else, he said, shaking his head. I have dealt with HOA disputes before, but that lady seemed especially determined to find you in violation of something. She made up a rule that does not even exist in the covenant, I explained, telling him the whole story about the fake citation and the $500 fine. I have been trying to get the management company to respond, but they keep dragging their feet. Save everything she sends you, he advised. If she tries to actually enforce that fine or put a lien on your property, you will have grounds for a lawsuit. HOAs have to follow their own rules. They cannot just make things up and fine people for them. That is what I figured, but the whole situation is so stressful. I bought this house thinking I was moving into a nice, quiet neighborhood, and instead, I got a wannabe dictator who apparently watches my house at 6:30 in the morning to catch me warming up my car. Some people have too much time on their hands, Mike said, and some people get a little power and it goes straight to their heads. Your HOA president sounds like both. We talked the rest of the way into Denver. I dropped Mike off near the courthouse, and he thanked me profusely for the ride. He gave me his card and told me to call if I had any more trouble with Brenda or the HOA. I went to work feeling better than I had in days. At least now, I had official confirmation from a police officer that I was not doing anything wrong. That afternoon, I finally got a call back from Jennifer at the HOA management company. Mr. Henderson, I have reviewed the covenant and the citations you received. I need to inform you that Section 12, Paragraph 4 does not pertain to vehicle idling. President Patterson appears to have referenced the incorrect section. So you are saying the fine is invalid? I asked. I am saying I need to speak with the board about this matter. There may have been a miscommunication. A miscommunication. She made up a rule and tried to fine me $500. That is not a miscommunication. That is fraud. Jennifer sighed. I understand your frustration. Let me set up a meeting with the board so we can resolve this. Are you available to attend a board meeting this Thursday evening? What time? 7 o'clock at the community clubhouse. I will be there, I said. Thursday evening came, and I showed up at the Ridgewood Hills Community Clubhouse at 6:55. The clubhouse was a small brick building near the neighborhood entrance, mostly used for HOA meetings and the occasional community event. Inside, there was a conference table where Brenda Patterson sat at the head, flanked by two other board members. One was an older woman who I assumed was Dorothy Summers, the secretary who had countersigned my fake citation. The other was a nervous-looking man in his 40s wearing khakis and a polo shirt. Jennifer from the management company was there too, sitting off to the side with a laptop and a stack of folders. There were a few other homeowners scattered around the room, probably there for other issues. Thank you for coming, Mr. Henderson, Jennifer said, gesturing for me to sit. We are going to address your situation first since it is time-sensitive. I sat down, and Brenda immediately gave me a look that could melt steel. Before we begin, I want to state for the record that Mr. Henderson has been hostile and uncooperative regarding HOA regulations. I have been neither hostile nor uncooperative, I said calmly. I have been asking you to show me where in the covenant it says I cannot warm up my car, and you have refused to do so because that rule does not exist. The board has the authority to enforce community standards, she shot back. Actually, no, you do not, Jennifer interrupted, opening one of her folders. The board has the authority to enforce the covenant's conditions and restrictions as they are written. The board cannot create new rules without going through the proper amendment process, which includes notifying all homeowners and holding a vote. I have reviewed the covenant thoroughly, and there is no provision restricting vehicle idling on private property. Brenda's face turned red again. Section 12 clearly states that vehicles must be maintained appropriately and cannot create nuisances. Section 12 is about holiday decorations and exterior aesthetics, Jennifer said flatly, turning her laptop around to show the actual text. There is nothing in there about vehicles running in driveways. Mr. Henderson's citation was issued in error, and the fine will be voided. This is unacceptable, Brenda said, her voice rising. I am the president of this HOA, and I have the right to enforce standards. You have the right to enforce the standards that exist in the governing documents, Jennifer corrected. You do not have the right to invent new standards. If you want to add a provision about idling vehicles, you need to propose an amendment, notify all homeowners, and put it to a vote per the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act. The nervous-looking man next to Brenda cleared his throat. Brenda, maybe we should just drop this. It sounds like we made a mistake. We did not make a mistake, Gerald, Brenda snapped. This man has been defiant and disrespectful, and he needs to learn that there are consequences for not following the rules. What rules? I asked, my patience wearing thin. Show me the rule I broke. Show me anywhere in that covenant where it says I cannot warm up my car. Brenda stood up, slamming her hand on the table. I have been managing this community for 7 years, and I will not be spoken to this way by some newcomer who thinks he can do whatever he wants. Brenda, sit down, Jennifer said sharply. "This meeting needs to stay professional. Mr. Henderson has every right to question citations issued against him, especially when those citations are not based on actual covenant provisions. The fine is voided, effective immediately. Mr. Henderson, you will receive written confirmation of this within 3 business days. Is there anything else you need to address?" "Yes, actually. I want to know what happens to board members who issue fraudulent fines, because that is what this was. President Patterson knowingly cited me for violating a rule that does not exist and tried to collect $500 from me. That seems like something that should have consequences." Dorothy Summers, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke up. "Now hold on just a minute. Brenda was acting in good faith to protect the community. Maybe she got the section number wrong, but that does not make it fraud." "She did not just get the section number wrong," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the video I had recorded. "She told me on 3 separate occasions that I was violating Section 12, Paragraph 4. When I pointed out that section is about holiday decorations, she refused to show me the correct section. She doubled down and issued a citation anyway. Then she called the police and filed a false report about me creating a public nuisance. The officer confirmed I was not breaking any laws. This was not a mistake. This was a deliberate attempt to bully me into paying a fine for something I did not do." I played the video I had recorded, showing Brenda confronting me asking her to show me the rule, her refusing, and then her calling 911. The room was silent as everyone watched. When it finished, Jennifer looked at Brenda with an expression that suggested she was rapidly losing patience. "Brenda, did you call the police over a vehicle idling issue?" Jennifer asked. "I called the police because he was being obstinate and creating a disturbance," Brenda said defensively. "I was standing in my own driveway warming up my car," I said. "The only disturbance was you marching over to my property at 6:30 in the morning to yell at me." Jennifer closed her laptop and took a deep breath. "This meeting is concluded. Mr. Henderson, your fine is voided and I apologize for the confusion. Brenda, I need to speak with you privately after this meeting. Everyone else, thank you for your time." The other homeowners filed out, some of them giving me sympathetic looks. Gerald, the nervous board member, practically ran out of the room. Dorothy Summers left too, but not before giving Brenda a worried glance. I gathered my things and started to leave, but Jennifer caught my arm. "Mr. Henderson, off the record, you might want to document any future interactions with President Patterson. This situation has raised some red flags, and I am going to be conducting a more thorough review of the board's activities. If she retaliates against you in any way, contact me immediately." "Retaliates? What do you mean?" Jennifer lowered her voice. "Between you and me, this is not the first complaint I have received about Brenda. There have been other homeowners who claimed she issued fines that were not warranted or threatened them with violations that did not exist. I have been trying to investigate, but people are often afraid to speak up because they are worried about retaliation. If she tries anything else with you, I need to know about it." "How would she retaliate?" I asked, suddenly feeling uneasy. "False violations, excessive fines, making your life difficult in small ways. Some HOA board members abuse their power when they feel challenged. Just keep your eyes open and let me know if anything else happens." I left the clubhouse feeling unsettled. What had seemed like a simple dispute over warming up my car was apparently part of a larger pattern of abuse. I drove home wondering what I had gotten myself into by buying a house in this neighborhood. The next morning, Friday, I warmed up my car again. I half expected Brenda to come charging across the street, but she did not. In fact, I did not see her at all. I went to work, came home, and had a quiet weekend. For a few days, I thought maybe the whole thing had blown over. Then Monday morning arrived, and I found a new letter in my mailbox. This one was not about my car. It was a citation for having my trash cans visible from the street outside of designated collection hours. The fine was $250. I looked at my trash cans, which were sitting on the side of my house exactly where they had been since I moved in 4 months ago. They were not visible from the street unless you walked up my driveway and looked behind my fence. The citation claimed I had been in violation for 30 days, and that this was my second offense. I had never received a first offense notification. I took pictures of my trash cans and their location, then called Jennifer immediately. "She is retaliating," I said when Jennifer answered. "I just got a citation for trash cans that are not even visible from the street." "Send me pictures," Jennifer said with a sigh. "I will add it to the file." Tuesday brought another citation, this time for having a wreath on my front door that was considered a holiday decoration outside of the approved holiday decoration period. The fine was $150. It was a plain evergreen wreath with no lights, no ornaments, nothing that screamed holiday. It was just a wreath. I had bought it in January because I liked how it looked. According to Brenda's citation, all holiday decorations had to be removed by January 15th, and it was now February 9th. I called Jennifer again. "Another citation. This is harassment." "I know," Jennifer said. "I am building a case to present to the board and potentially recommend Brenda's removal as president, but I need more evidence of a pattern. Keep sending me everything." Wednesday, I got a citation for having my garage door open for more than 15 minutes during non-business hours. Thursday, I got one for parking my car in a way that was allegedly blocking the sidewalk, even though my car was completely in my driveway and nowhere near the sidewalk. Friday brought a citation for having improperly maintained landscaping, specifically claiming that my bushes were overgrown and needed trimming. It was February in Colorado. Nothing was growing. Everything was dormant and covered in snow. Each citation came with a fine ranging from $150 to $300. By the end of the week, Brenda had issued me citations totaling over $1,200, none of which were valid. I documented everything, took pictures and videos, and sent it all to Jennifer. I also reached out to Officer Mike Carson, who I had given a ride to downtown. He told me to file a harassment report with the Lakewood Police Department and gave me the name of a detective who handled civil harassment cases. I filed the report that weekend, sitting in the police station and explaining the entire situation to Detective Sarah Walsh. She was a sharp woman in her late 40s who listened carefully and took detailed notes. "This is definitely harassment," she said when I finished. "But because it is happening within the framework of an HOA, it is a bit complicated. Have you considered getting a lawyer?" "I am starting to think I need one," I admitted. "But is there anything you can do?" "She is filing false reports, issuing fraudulent fines, and basically making my life hell because I challenged her." "Let me look into this," Detective Walsh said. "If she is doing this to multiple people, there might be grounds for criminal charges, especially if there is evidence of financial fraud. Do you know of any other homeowners she has targeted?" "The management company mentioned there have been other complaints, but I do not know who they are." "I will reach out to the management company and see what I can find out. In the meantime, keep documenting everything and do not pay any of those fines until this is resolved." I left the police station feeling slightly better but still anxious. I had never been involved in any kind of legal situation before, and the idea of potentially having to sue my HOA or press criminal charges against the president was overwhelming. Monday morning, 2 weeks after the initial car warming incident, I went out to start my car and found all 4 of my tires slashed. I stood there staring at my Honda, which was now sitting low on completely flat tires, and felt my stomach drop. This had gone way beyond HOA harassment. This was criminal destruction of property. I immediately called the police, then called my insurance company, then called Jennifer. The police arrived first, and I was relieved to see Officer Mike Carson step out of the patrol car along with another officer. "Mr. Henderson," Mike said, his expression serious. "What happened?" I showed him my tires. "I came out to warm up my car and found them like this. It had to have happened sometime last night or early this morning." The other officer, whose name tag Reed Martinez, started taking pictures and examining the damage. Mike walked around my car slowly, then looked across the street at Brenda's house. "Have you had any more trouble with your HOA president?" he asked. "She has been issuing me fake citations all week," I said, showing him my phone with all the letters I had photographed. "I filed a harassment report with Detective Walsh on Saturday." "Sarah Walsh. Good, she is thorough. This looks personal. Do you have any security cameras?" "No, I do not." "I never thought I would need them." "I strongly suggest you get some," Mike said. "In the meantime, we will file a report for criminal mischief and destruction of property. Do you have any direct evidence that your HOA president did this?" "No, but she is the only person who has any reason to. She has been harassing me non-stop since I challenged her on the car idling thing." Officer Martinez came back over. "All 4 tires were slashed with something sharp, probably a knife. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. This is going to be expensive to fix." My insurance company sent a tow truck, and my car was hauled away to a shop. The estimate came back at over $800 for 4 new tires and an alignment check. My deductible was $500. I was furious, stressed, and seriously considering just selling my house and moving somewhere without an HOA. That afternoon, Jennifer called me. "I heard about your tires. I am so sorry this is happening." "Did Brenda do it?" I asked bluntly. "I do not have any proof, but between you and me, I would not be surprised. I have been digging into the HOA's financials, and I found some irregularities. It looks like Brenda has been issuing fines to homeowners, and then pocketing some of the money instead of depositing it into the HOA account. I have found at least $15,000 in discrepancies over the past 2 years. She has been stealing from the HOA. It looks that way. I am putting together a full report to present to the board and potentially to law enforcement. If this is what I think it is, she could face criminal charges for embezzlement." "Good," I said. "She deserves it." "There is more," Jennifer continued. "I reached out to other homeowners who have filed complaints about Brenda, and 3 of them agreed to talk to Detective Walsh. One of them had their mailbox destroyed. Another had paint poured on their driveway. The third one had dead animals left on their porch. All of them challenged Brenda on something, and all of them faced escalating harassment afterward. That is insane. How has she gotten away with this for so long?" "People are scared," Jennifer said simply. "They are afraid of losing their homes or being targeted even more. But now that multiple people are willing to speak up, and now that there is evidence of financial fraud, I think we can finally do something about this." Detective Walsh called me the next day and asked me to come to the station. When I arrived, she had me sit down in an interview room and showed me a thick file folder. "I have been investigating your HOA president," she said. "Based on the information from the management company and interviews with other homeowners, I have enough evidence to obtain a warrant. We are going to search Brenda Patterson's home and financial records." If we find what I think we are going to find, she will be facing charges for embezzlement, fraud, harassment, and possibly assault and vandalism. How long will this take? I asked. We are executing the warrant tomorrow morning. I will keep you updated. I went home feeling a strange mix of vindication and anxiety. The situation had escalated so far beyond what I ever could have imagined. All I wanted to do was warm up my car before driving to work. And now I was caught up in a criminal investigation involving an HOA president who was apparently running a small-scale extortion and embezzlement scheme. The next morning, Wednesday, February 18th, I was getting ready for work when I heard a commotion outside. I looked out my window and saw 3 police cars parked in front of Brenda's house. Detective Walsh and several officers were at her front door with a warrant. I watched as Brenda answered the door, and even from across the street I could see her face go pale. The officers entered her house, and Brenda was left standing on her porch looking absolutely panicked. The search took about 3 hours. Officers carried out boxes of documents, a computer, and several other items. At one point, I saw them take Brenda back inside, and when she came out again, she was in handcuffs. They put her in the back of a police car and drove away. Dorothy Summers, the HOA secretary, came running out of her house down the street and tried to talk to the officers, but they waved her off and left. Detective Walsh called me that afternoon. We found evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and we also found a knife with tire rubber residue in Brenda Patterson's garage. We are testing it to see if it matches your tires, but it is not looking good for her. She has been arrested and is being held on multiple charges. The district attorney is reviewing everything now. What happens next? I asked. She will be arraigned probably within the next couple of days. Depending on what the DA decides to charge her with and what evidence holds up, she could be facing several years in prison. The HOA management company is also pursuing civil charges for the money she stole. I sat down heavily on my couch. I just wanted to warm up my car. Detective Walsh laughed softly. I know, but you did the right thing by standing up to her. If you had not pushed back, she would have kept victimizing people. You helped expose something that needed to be exposed. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Brenda was formally charged with embezzlement, fraud, harassment, stalking, and criminal mischief. The prosecution had evidence of her stealing over $18,000 from the HOA over 2 years by issuing fake fines and pocketing the money. They also had evidence linking her to the tire slashing and to other acts of vandalism against homeowners who had challenged her authority. Dorothy Summers, the HOA secretary, was also investigated but ultimately not charged. It turned out she had been signing off on Brenda's decisions without actually reviewing them, which was negligent but not criminal. She resigned from the board in shame. Gerald, the nervous board member, took over as interim president and immediately started working with Jennifer to reform the HOA's practices. He sent a letter to every homeowner apologizing for what had happened and outlining new oversight procedures to prevent future abuse. All of the fines Brenda had issued to me were voided, and the HOA actually reimbursed me for my insurance deductible to replace my tires. Several other homeowners came forward with their own stories of harassment, and the HOA ended up refunding thousands of dollars in fraudulent fines. Brenda's trial was set for June, but her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement and criminal mischief in exchange for the other charges being dropped. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and to the individual homeowners she had harmed. She also had to pay for my tires directly. Officer Mike Carson and I stayed in touch. He told me that the Brenda Patterson case had become something of a cautionary tale at the police department about HOA disputes gone wrong. He also thanked me again for the ride that morning, joking that my warm car had saved him from frostbite and helped expose a criminal in the process. By the time spring arrived, things in Ridgewood Hills had calmed down considerably. Gerald turned out to be a reasonable and fair HOA president. He actually listened to homeowners, followed the covenant as written, and did not try to invent new rules out of thin air. The neighborhood felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. I installed security cameras around my house, just in case, but I never needed them. I continued warming up my car every cold morning without incident. In fact, several of my neighbors started doing the same thing, and we would sometimes wave to each other from our driveways in the early morning darkness, all of us waiting for our cars to defrost. One morning in late March, I was standing in my driveway with my coffee when my neighbor from 2 doors down, an older man named Robert, walked over. "Hey, I just wanted to thank you," he said, "for standing up to Brenda. She fined me 3 times last year for things that were not even violations. I paid the fines because I was scared of what she would do if I fought back. I got all that money refunded because you were brave enough to push back." "I was not really being brave," I said honestly. "I was just stubborn and annoyed." Robert laughed. "Well, your stubbornness helped a lot of people. This neighborhood is a better place without her reign of terror." We chatted for a few more minutes, and then I got in my nice warm car and drove to work. As I drove through the neighborhood, I thought about how strange life could be. I had moved to Lakewood for a fresh start, a quiet place to live while I worked and saved money. Instead, I had ended up taking down a corrupt HOA president, making friends with a police officer, and becoming something of a neighborhood hero, albeit an accidental one. The legal aftermath continued for months. The HOA hired a forensic accountant who discovered that Brenda had actually stolen closer to $25,000 over her 7-year tenure as president, not just the $18,000 initially found. She had been running a sophisticated scheme where she would issue false fines, collect payments in cash or check, and then only deposit a portion into the HOA account while keeping the rest for herself. She had also been inflating invoices from contractors and keeping the difference. Several homeowners filed civil suits against her for emotional distress and property damage. My case was fairly straightforward since I had clear documentation of the harassment and the tire slashing. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Teresa Palmer who specialized in HOA disputes, told me I had one of the strongest cases she had ever seen. Most HOA harassment cases are hard to prove because they rely on he said, she said testimony, Teresa explained during one of our meetings. But you have video evidence, written citations that directly contradict the covenant, testimony from a police officer, and physical evidence linking her to property damage. This is about as clear-cut as it gets. We settled out of court. Brenda's homeowner's insurance ended up paying me $15,000 for damages, harassment, and emotional distress. I used some of that money to take a much-needed vacation and put the rest toward my mortgage. The criminal case concluded in August. Brenda served 18 months in prison and was released on parole with strict conditions. She was ordered to stay away from Ridgewood Hills and from all the homeowners she had harassed. She lost her house in the aftermath, unable to keep up with the mortgage payments while in prison and facing massive legal bills and restitution payments. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to another state to live with family after her release. Dorothy Summers never recovered from the scandal. She moved out of the neighborhood about 6 months after Brenda's arrest, too embarrassed to face the other homeowners. Gerald served as president for 2 years before stepping down, and the board elected a woman named Patricia Young to take over. Patricia was everything Brenda was not: reasonable, fair, transparent, and focused on actually maintaining the community rather than wielding power over it. The Ridgewood Hills HOA became something of a model for how to recover from corruption. Jennifer, the management company representative who had helped expose Brenda's crimes, was promoted to regional manager and used our HOA as a case study for training other community managers on how to spot and prevent board abuse. I stayed in my house in Lakewood. Despite everything that happened, I actually loved the neighborhood once the toxic element was removed. My neighbors were friendly, the area was beautiful, and my commute to Denver was reasonable. I never had another problem with the HOA. In fact, the new board was so hands-off and reasonable that I barely noticed they existed most of the time, which was exactly how an HOA should be. Officer Mike Carson and I became actual friends. We met up for coffee occasionally, and I even attended his daughter's high school graduation party. He told me that the Brenda Patterson case had taught him to take HOA disputes more seriously, even when they seemed trivial at first. "You never know what you are going to uncover when you start pulling on threads," he said. 2 years after the initial car warming incident, I was sitting in my driveway one cold February morning, warming up my car and drinking coffee, when a moving truck pulled up 3 houses down. A young couple got out and started directing the movers. I walked over to introduce myself, being the unofficial neighborhood welcoming committee since I had basically saved everyone from an HOA tyrant. "Hi, I am Isaac Henderson," I said, shaking hands with the man who introduced himself as Thomas. His wife was named Rebecca. "Welcome to Ridgewood Hills." "Thanks," Thomas said. "We are excited to be here. The neighborhood looks great. How is the HOA? We heard there was some drama a couple years ago." "There was," I admitted, "but it got resolved. The current board is actually really reasonable. Just follow the covenant and you will be fine. And if you ever have any issues, do not be afraid to speak up. We learned the hard way that letting small abuses slide can lead to bigger problems." "Good to know," Rebecca said. "Hey, random question. Is it okay to warm up your car in the driveway here? Our last place had weird rules about that." I laughed. "You can absolutely warm up your car. In fact, I highly recommend it. Trust me on that one." They looked at me curiously, and I gave them the very abbreviated version of the story. Their eyes got wider and wider as I talked. "Wait, so the HOA president went to prison because she called the cops on you for warming up your car?" Thomas asked. "Well, that was just the beginning. But yes, essentially. If she had just left me alone, nobody would have looked into her finances and discovered the embezzlement. She brought it all on herself." We chatted for a while longer, and I helped them carry a few boxes inside. As I walked back to my house, I felt grateful for how things had turned out. It had been a stressful, frustrating, and sometimes scary experience, but ultimately it had made the neighborhood better for everyone. I got in my car, now perfectly warm after running for 20 minutes, and headed to work. The sun was just starting to come up over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Denver's skyline was visible in the distance, and the roads were clear despite the cold. It was going to be a good day. As I drove, I thought about all the little moments that had led to Brenda's downfall. If I had just paid that first fake fine, she would have kept victimizing people. If Officer Carson had sided with her instead of confirming that warming up cars was legal, I might have backed down. If I had not documented everything obsessively, there would not have been enough evidence to prove harassment. And if Brenda had not escalated to slashing my tires, the investigation might never have uncovered the embezzlement. It was a reminder that standing up for yourself matters, even when the issue seems small. A $500 fine for warming up my car seemed almost petty in the grand scheme of things, but it was a symptom of a much larger problem. Brenda had been abusing her power for years, and it took someone finally saying, "No, show me the rule," to bring the whole house of cards crashing down. I also thought about the importance of community. Once other homeowners saw that it was safe to speak up, they came forward with their own stories. Robert with his fake fines, the woman whose mailbox was destroyed, the man who had paint dumped on his driveway, and all the others who had suffered in silence because they were afraid. Together, we had been able to stop someone who seemed unstoppable when she was targeting people individually. The legal system had worked the way it was supposed to, which was not always a given. Detective Walsh had taken the case seriously. The district attorney had prosecuted vigorously. The judge had handed down an appropriate sentence. And the civil courts had made sure that victims were compensated for their damages. It restored some of my faith in the system. When I got to work, several of my coworkers asked me how my morning was. "Pretty standard," I said with a smile. Warmed up my car, said hi to some neighbors, drove in with no traffic, living the dream. They had no idea about the saga that had started with such a simple act 2 years earlier, and that was fine. That chapter of my life was closed. I was just a guy living in Lakewood, working in Denver, warming up his car on cold mornings like millions of other people did every winter. But I kept Officer Mike Carson's card in my wallet, just in case, and I kept my security cameras running. And I read every HOA newsletter thoroughly to make sure I knew exactly what the rules were. Once you have been through something like that, you never quite let your guard down completely. The rest of that winter passed without incident. Spring came, and then summer. The neighborhood had block parties and garage sales and all the normal suburban activities. Kids rode bikes in the streets, people walked their dogs. Life went on. I started dating someone I met through a friend, a teacher named Tessa Parker, who thought the whole HOA story was simultaneously horrifying and hilarious. "Only you could turn warming up your car into a federal case," she joked. "It was not a federal case," I protested. "Just regular criminal court. You know what I mean. Most people get into fights with their HOA over fence heights or lawn ornaments. You got the president sent to prison." "She got herself sent to prison," I corrected. "I just warmed up my car." Tessa and I got serious pretty quickly. She loved the house and the neighborhood, though she made me tell her the full Brenda Patterson story at least 3 times because she could not believe all the details. We got engaged that December, right around the time I would normally start warming up my car every morning again. The first cold morning of the season, I went out to start my car and found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. My heart sank for a moment, having flashbacks to citations and fines. But when I opened it, it was just a note from my neighbor Robert. "Thanks for making this neighborhood safe for car warming. Enjoy the winter, Robert." I smiled and tucked the note in my pocket. Tessa came out with my coffee and her own coat on. "Your car is not the only one that needs warming up," she said. "It is freezing out here." We stood in the driveway together, watching our breath turn into clouds, waiting for the car to heat up. Across the street, another neighbor started their car. Down the block, someone else did the same. It was a completely ordinary suburban winter morning, which was exactly what I had wanted when I moved to Ridgewood Hills in the first place. "You know what I am grateful for?" Tessa asked, leaning against me. "What?" "That you are stubborn. If you had just paid that fine and moved on, Brenda would still be terrorizing people. Your refusal to back down actually made a difference. I was not being heroic, I said. I was just annoyed. Sometimes being annoyed is enough, she said. Sometimes refusing to accept something unfair is exactly what the situation needs. We got in the warm car and headed out to breakfast before work. As we drove through the neighborhood, past houses where people were starting their own cars and scraping frost off windshields, I felt content. This was my home. This was my community. And I had played a small part in making it better. The Brenda Patterson case was occasionally mentioned in local news stories about HOA reform. Colorado ended up passing new legislation that required HOA boards to undergo training and made it easier for homeowners to challenge improper fines. The law was informally called Brenda's Law by some of the legislators who pushed for it, though the official name was something much more boring involving common interest communities and financial oversight. I was even invited to testify before a state legislative committee about my experience. I told them the whole story, from warming up my car to the fake citations to the tire slashing to the eventual criminal conviction. Several legislators seemed shocked that such a small initial dispute could escalate so dramatically. The problem is that HOAs have a tremendous amount of power over people's lives and property, but very little oversight, I explained. Most board members are well-meaning volunteers, but some people see it as an opportunity to exercise control over others. There need to be clear checks and balances and easy ways for homeowners to challenge improper decisions without fear of retaliation. The legislation passed, and I got a thank you letter from the governor's office for my advocacy. It was surreal to think that warming up my car had led to actual changes in state law, but life is strange sometimes. Tessa and I got married the following spring in a small ceremony at the Ridgewood Hills clubhouse, the same place where I had confronted Brenda at that HOA board meeting years earlier. Officer Mike Carson attended, along with Detective Sarah Walsh, Jennifer from the management company, Gerald the former president, Patricia the current president, and dozens of neighbors who had become friends. During his toast at the reception, Mike said, "I have been a police officer for over a decade, and I have responded to thousands of calls. Most of them are routine and forgettable. But I will never forget the morning I got called out because a HOA president demanded I cite a guy for warming up his car. I thought it was going to be a waste of time. Instead, I ended up helping expose a criminal and making a great friend. Plus, I got a ride in a warm car, which was honestly the highlight of my morning. Everyone laughed, and I raised my glass. To warm cars, good neighbors, and justice prevailing. To warm cars, everyone echoed." Years later, when people ask me about the most interesting thing that ever happened to me, I tell them about the time my HOA president went to prison for calling the cops on my idling car. The story never fails to get reactions ranging from disbelief to laughter to anger on my behalf. But it is all true, every ridiculous bit of it. I still live in Ridgewood Hills. Tessa and I bought the house next door when it went up for sale and knocked through the wall to make one large house. We have 2 kids now, and they love the neighborhood. They ride their bikes in the street and play with the neighbor kids, and have no idea that this quiet suburban community was once the site of what the local news called one of the worst cases of HOA corruption in Colorado history. Every winter morning when I go out to warm up my car, I think about that first confrontation with Brenda. I think about how a simple act of car maintenance turned into a legal battle that changed my life and my community. I think about all the people who were helped because I was too stubborn to pay a fine for a rule that did not exist. And then I get in my warm car, drink my coffee, and drive to work, grateful for heat, for justice, and for the ordinary miracle of a functioning vehicle on a cold Colorado morning. Some people say I am a hero for standing up to corruption. I say I was just a guy who wanted his car windows to defrost before driving. But maybe that is what heroes are sometimes. Ordinary people who refuse to accept something unfair and keep pushing until things change. The HOA board sends out monthly newsletters now, and they always include a reminder that homeowners should feel free to contact them with any questions about the rules, and to never be afraid to challenge citations they believe are improper. They also include a section thanking members of the community who have contributed to making Ridgewood Hills a better place. My name was in that section once, which was embarrassing but also kind of nice. Patricia, the current HOA president, is up for re-election next month, and nobody is running against her because everyone agrees she is doing a great job. That is what an HOA should be. So competent and unobtrusive that nobody feels the need to overthrow it. Boring is good when it comes to community governance. Officer Mike Carson retired from the police force last year and now works as a consultant training other departments on community policing. He still tells the story of the idling car call and uses it as an example of how taking citizens' complaints seriously, even when they seem trivial, can lead to uncovering larger issues. Detective Sarah Walsh was promoted to lieutenant and runs the Financial Crimes Division now. She told me once that the Brenda Patterson investigation taught her to always look for patterns of behavior, not just isolated incidents. When you were just one guy complaining about an HOA fine, it was easy to dismiss. But when we found all the other victims and saw the pattern, it became clear we were dealing with a predator. Jennifer, the management company representative, started her own HOA management firm that specializes in ethical governance and homeowner advocacy. She uses the Ridgewood Hills case as a teaching tool for new board members about what not to do. As for Brenda Patterson, I have no idea what happened to her after she moved away. I hope she learned something from the experience, but I am not particularly concerned either way. She is no longer my problem or anyone else's in this neighborhood. The knife she used to slash my tires is apparently in an evidence locker somewhere, preserved in case there are future legal proceedings. My lawyer said the physical evidence was crucial in getting the conviction because it directly tied her to the vandalism. Without it, she might have claimed someone else slashed my tires and she was being framed. I replaced my Honda Accord last year with a newer model, and yes, I still warm it up every cold morning. Tessa jokes that I should get a remote starter so I do not have to go outside, but there is something satisfying about the ritual of starting the car, going back inside for coffee, and then heading out into the cold knowing that warmth is waiting. My kids ask me sometimes why I tell the car warming story so much. I explain to them that it is important to stand up for yourself, even when the issue seems small. I tell them that rules should be fair and applied equally, and that people in power should be held accountable. I tell them that one person speaking up can make a difference, but a community supporting each other makes an even bigger difference. They nod like they understand, but they are still young. Someday when they are older and facing their own unfair situations, maybe they will remember that their dad once took on a corrupt HOA president over a warming car and won. Maybe that will give them courage to stand up for themselves too. On the anniversary of the day Officer Carson showed up at my house, Mike and I have coffee together. It has become a tradition. We sit in a cafe in downtown Lakewood and talk about life, work, family, and how strange it is that a routine police call turned into a friendship and a criminal investigation. You ever regret not just paying the fine? Mike asked me once. Never, I said immediately. Not even for a second. Paying that fine would have meant accepting something I knew was wrong. It would have meant letting Brenda continue victimizing people. I am glad I pushed back, even though it was stressful and scary at times. You did good, Isaac, Mike said. A lot of people would have backed down. A lot of people did back down, I pointed out. That is why she got away with it for so long. I just happened to be stubborn enough and documented things well enough that it was harder for her to intimidate me into silence. Still counts as doing good, Mike insisted. I suppose he is right. Intent matters, but results matter too. My intent was just to warm up my car without being fined for it. The result was exposing corruption, recovering stolen money, and making my neighborhood safer for everyone. I will take that outcome. These days when I drive through Ridgewood Hills, I see a thriving community. The streets are well maintained, the common areas are beautiful, and people actually seem happy to live here. The HOA functions the way it should, maintaining property values, enforcing reasonable rules fairly, and staying out of people's way as much as possible. New homeowners moving in often ask longtime residents about the HOA, and they are told it is fine. They are reasonable, which is the highest compliment an HOA can receive. Nobody wants a dramatic HOA. Everyone just wants their streets plowed, their common areas maintained, and to be left alone to live their lives. I achieved what I set out to do that cold February morning years ago. I warmed up my car, I drove to work safely, and I refused to be bullied. Everything that came after was just the consequence of standing firm on that simple principle. Sometimes the smallest acts of resistance lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes warming up your car is just warming up your car, and sometimes it is the first step in taking down a tyrant. Either way, my car is always warm when I am ready to drive it, and that is all I really wanted in the first place.